To get to the heart of the question today, many people, though, puzzled that it was so close, right? Disheartened, really almost, whether you're a Biden or a Trump supporter, um, why was it so close? And particularly if you had deep concerns around Trump, maybe very disappointed in your fellow Americans, fellow voters, right? For so many voting for Donald Trump. And yes, it was more than 74 million. Um, the highest other than Biden. And it appears that about half the country, right, and we've seen this narrative, right, in the media and other places, half the country supports the candidate, uh, and really whom the other half finds viscerally in some way unacceptable, right? Trump supporters also find Biden unacceptable. So the other point I want to make here up front is that it really wasn't half of America that, or nearly half of America that voted for Donald Trump, right? We know that about 85 million eligible voters, adult citizens, didn't turn out, even in this incredibly high, historically, turnout. We want to see turnout always higher, but 67% is historically high. Unfortunately, I would say, because obviously we want that to be even bigger. So 85 million Americans that didn't turn out. So if you do the numbers, really, Trump received about roughly 31% of the country's eligible voters. Biden got about 33% of the eligible voters. So we can walk away from that and say, how could half of America, right, on either end? But here's also something very important to note, is that those that didn't vote, right, the voting electorate is not representative of the US population. It is older, whiter, wealthier, more educated. But definitely in terms of race ethnicity, it is whiter. In every state, then, of course, in California, we're more diverse, but it's always whiter than the population is. So the whites are always overrepresented amongst voters than they are a part of the population. It varies across states, but we know this. And for those that don't vote, they have very different preferences, policy preferences, preferences for candidates. So this has already been noted in the exit polls. And remember, exit polls are of voters, right? And they are historically, consistently problematic for voters of color and young people. We want to say that. So we know that, but they're at least initially after an election, the best that we have in terms of data. But of voters, right, we know that overwhelmingly voters of color, there was a variation, but as a group, right, supported Biden over Trump. And we might suspect that of the population, not just of voters of color, that would be even more so. But here, just, if only whites voted, we know from the exit polls, 58% of white voters supported Trump in this election. Overwhelming voters of color, as I said, supported Biden. Now California is at 45% of white voters in California chose Trump. And 51% chose Biden. That's a 4 percentage point difference in a state of California that might surprise a lot of Californians in the way we think of ourselves as such a blue state. If only whites voted, obviously be a very different situation nationally, and it would be a really close race in California. And Trump's level of support from white voters overall nationally was about the same as 2016, which also might, right, we've kind of alluded to that, also surprises people.